Hello everyone. I am joined by Kristian Crowe, who in my opinion is one of the best yoga teachers and meditation teachers in Melbourne, and I do not say that lightly. I wholeheartedly mean that. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yay. So Kristian was actually the one who led me to a style of meditation that changed my life forever. So I am eternally grateful I rocked up to your class that day because it profoundly changed my life. So I think a really nice place to start, I'd love you to describe what you do, but mostly highlighting why you do what you do and what ultimately led you to become a Vedic meditation teacher.
It's an interesting question. So essentially what I do is multifaceted,
Yes.
but what I really want to share is the experience that I got to have was the realization that actually everything that I'm seeking is already here. And sharing that with people is so fulfilling and also helps to seed sovereignty. So it's like, I don't actually need to give you anything. This process or journey that we're going on together, we're walking hand in hand, and it's more of like a revelation. How can I help you to see the parts of yourself that are already full, whole, content, fulfilled? So however I can do that, like meditation is one vehicle, yoga is another, emotional purification, physical purification. So, and then Vedic meditation, I actually started Vedic meditation because I was feeling awkward in Shavasana's. I was like, I feel like there's something here that I'm not quite understanding.
Totally. I'm like, is it done yet?
Is it done? Like the yoga practice, being an ex-performer, was always so beautiful and it felt so nourishing. And there were definitely times where I was dropping into a deeper state in stillness, but I just had no fucking clue what I was doing, to be honest. So I was like, I should probably, as a yoga teacher, deeply understand this process. And so I'd been talking to a few different yoga teachers about what's available, who's the leading meditation teacher in Melbourne, and, one person, then two people, then three people, and all these recommendations to go see Mahasoma and work with Laura Poole came through. And the last one was my PT or coach, Oscar Meerman. Do you know Oscar?
I do.
Yeah, he's fab. And so I was like, okay, it's time. I have to go. Yeah. So I stepped into that Vedic meditation course. It was in St Kilda. It was literally 2 weeks before lockdown.
Oh, wow.
So COVID had started, but hadn't really set in, and the kind of severity of what was about to unfold hadn't been revealed to anyone yet. And so I got to sit the full course, which was great.
Perfect.
And then when I was in the course, it was just, when you hear something and it hits you right in the heart.
It's exactly how I felt in your class, where you shared what you did and I had to follow it.
Exactly. I just felt compelled. So, going in, it was like, an innocent, maybe I just will become a little bit of a better yoga teacher, a bit of a space holder, a bit of a better facilitator, And then I got the taste of the wisdom and something in me opened in a way that made me feel compelled. Like it was like, I'm choiceless, I'm all in. It was just like a complete surrendering. And that's kind of what the practice asks from the very beginning. To be honest, I didn't really like the meditation practice when I began. I felt a lot of resistance and I had a lot of compounded stress from the past. And so for me, I'd always labeled myself as a doer. And this idea of being was so foreign and so alien. And, this was the experience that I was essentially having in Shavasana, like some kind of discomfort that it put me in a place of something's not right.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to deeply understand that. Whenever something feels out of place in my practice or in my body, it always sparks a sense of curiosity. And so moving towards it, being of Pitta constitution, I like fire. I was like, okay, let's move towards this. And, meditation is totally antithetical to doing. And in that way created this incredible softening over time. Gradual. And the profundity of that and the implications on my life was so big that I just couldn't help but become a teacher and want to share it myself.
Yeah, I love it. And when you speak about going to that course and then being completely almost transformed in terms of a direction, what is it about the Vedic worldview that you resonate so strongly with? What is it that you love?
I was actually reflecting on this yesterday. I did a meditation, a facilitated meditation, and I went back to that version of myself. And it put me straight in the heart and made me quite emotional just to feel what I used to feel, which was an insatiable drive or desire for more. More from life, more from this experience, more from work. And I was just looking in all the wrong places. You know, the mind is seeking that continuum of happiness. And little did I know it was already underlying all experience. And so when I was in that space, you know, the heart-to-heart truth, like the truth that was dropping in for Laura and that was hitting me straight in the heart, it was like a pull. And so the wisdom itself, and then the integration aspect, because you know, in Tantra we call it Atma Vyapti and Shiva Vyapti. Atma Vyapti is coming into contact with the self. Yes. It's moving inwards.
The inward direction.
Yeah, it's kind of moving away from life.
Yes.
Right? And contacting the part of yourself that underlies all experience. And then we have the Shiva Vyapti, the movement back towards life and the recognition that that same thing actually exists everywhere.
Yes.
And so as I continued to explore and I was moving inwards, I was kind of like, what are the implications in my life? You know, how can I integrate this? And that's when I quite quickly stepped into the Vedic wisdom courses and started the practice of rounding. And these are all practices which help to integrate the state of consciousness that you cultivate in meditation. And that was really the hook for me. It was like, yes, I want to contact the self. Yes, I want to deeply understand, you know, but also I want it to be relevant in the way that I live. And that kind of cyclical nature of the practice, of the wisdom that Maharishi brought to the world, and then the way that Laura and Mahasoma taught me just felt deeply relevant. And it's continued to unfold over time, you know. You think you understand something and then it's a whole another level. And
never ending.
Exactly. Still on the path.
I love that, because I think a lot of people associate meditation with this like inward journey, or like going in, to stay in, to be renouncing the world. But of course we live in the world and we want to make committed to it and relevant in our contribution to it. And so it's so beautiful that this style of meditation includes how to actually come back out.
And you know, the wisdom of meditation is to know yourself. And you can only serve others to the degree that you can serve yourself. That's been my experience. So, you know, there's this idea that's kind of, I guess, venerated in the world where, oh, how can I just give to others? Just give. And I understand where it's coming from. But at the same time, if you're unable to give that to yourself, how are you supposed to have the direct experience or knowing of that love then to pour into another? It's like the analogy of you can't give from an empty cup, you know?
Yes.
And it's, this practice is about contacting the fullness of yourself, recognizing that within the other, and then within that recognition, you can see where there's blockage and you can support if that's what's needed.
Totally. I really want to dive into the mechanics of meditation. Like when you spoke at the start, and it's like your, you know, role on this planet is to give as many pathways as possible to this recognition of it's all here. How does meditation assist that recognition?
Yeah. Well, if the wisdom of life is everything is already here, the doing is actually not what's going to bring you in contact with that. So it's like, if it's already underlying, then just be natural.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, it's like naturalness is so foreign.
Yes.
We live in such a dysfunctional world, you know, we're in front of screens, we're in our little boxes, we're disconnected from people, we're working our 9 to 5, you know, whatever it is that creates either, you know, a wild to mild dysfunction for you. it's taking you away from the naturalness, which enables you to contact the self. And so meditation inserted into your life twice daily, that's the prescription within this tradition. It's kind of like, just be normal, just be natural, just be yourself, like, which involves thinking and feeling and discomfort and pain. And, you know, our society is built in a way that draws us away from those things to try to protect us very innocently. But actually, as we pull away from those things, they end up running our life.
Yeah.
And so this meditation practice, a byproduct of it is especially if you're practicing consistently, you show up in every single state. Yeah. You show up when you're angry, you show up when you're sad, you show up when you're nervous, you show up when, you know, insert, you know, uncomfortable emotion here. And as we make contact with these discomforts, it's actually the experience of releasing the residue of stress and fatigue from the past. And so it's not coming in and down. I think this is the biggest misconception of meditation. Like, I sit down and then all these experiences are coming in. Kind of flipping that on its head within this tradition, it's like, actually, the experiences that emerge, they're already impressions or samskaras that of the past that have remained latent in your body.
Do you want to explain samskara?
Yeah, samskara is anything that is undigested. So any experience that comes in that you're not able to process.
Still got charge on it.
Exactly.
Incomplete.
But it can be positive and negative.
Yes.
You know, and so these experiences come in, they store themselves because we're unable to process, mostly because we're living in a very fast-paced society where information is coming in like exponentially more than in the past.
Faster than we can consciously comprehend.
Exactly. Yeah. Biologically faster. Yes. And so we're at a disadvantage, and these are kind of compounding over time. And meditation starts, you know, we have the parasympathetic nervous system that has two functions. One is rest, and you will get deep, deep rest in meditation. But the other is digest.
Yes.
So we have to be willing to allow the fire. Digestion is governed by fire. In Ayurveda, Agni is what we call it. We have to allow the fire of our practice to emerge as discomfort and let it kind of play out in a really natural way. And the biggest barrier to meditation for me personally was like, something's going wrong.
Yes.
You know, it's not working. I'm the anomaly. I'm the one that it doesn't work on. I'm the only one that it doesn't work for. And so that context, that contact, community, that's like one of the biggest parts of what we're trying to build and provide in our business, Vedic Yoga. It's just like, how can we provide consistent spaces where people can get context, contextualize the experience of something's going wrong, and just have a dialogue from someone who's a little further down the path with a torch being like, there's a hole there, just watch out.
Yeah. And it sounds like what you're alluding to is the relationship between stress and meditation. Could you explain the way in which meditation allows us to move through the high level of like the negative impact of too much stress?
Yeah. You know, I was talking about the dual function of parasympathetic. You know, the more we rest, the more we're able to tap into deeper stresses. And the more we excavate deep stresses through the natural process of being with them, feeling into discomfort, the deeper we're able to rest. So it's a cycle, you know? And if we're not rested, the body has no capability to digest. Just look at the chronic digestive issues that exist in society. And so if we're continuing to move through life, expecting that the body and its intelligence is just going to solve everything for us, we're going to end up with this debt. And so meditation in and of itself very innocently helps us to contact the intelligence of the mind body, which is always processing and digesting stress, actually. So it's not that the meditation does anything to you, rather, but it just reveals the intelligence that's ever present, that's always looking to seek resolution within these stored experiences. And so, you know, digestion of stress is natural. Yeah, so if we're...
body's always trying to do it.
Exactly.
We're just allowing it a better chance.
Exactly. And meditation is very supportive of, I guess, increasing the felt sense of intelligence. Like, oh yes, this body is intelligent. But when we're in a place of dysfunction, it can feel like our body's betraying us.
Yes.
But we're just not aligned with how it's naturally biologically meant to be. And so if we just put ourselves back in contact with that, it feels like almost too simple. For me, it was like breathing, too easy.
Yeah.
Or like, resting.
What a waste of time.
Yeah.
I could be doing something productive
Exactly.
to work on this.
It feels too simple. Yeah. But you have to have the direct experience. And that's where this practice really kind of, in my opinion, excels.
Yes.
Because it's not an idea of the self. You don't have to think your way into contact with the part of you that doesn't change. It's actually just drop in, and very innocently, one day it's going to happen.
Yeah.
We don't know when that day is, but...
Yeah, one day. And direct experience gives you wisdom, and meditation is a wisdom practice.
Exactly, jnana.
Yeah. I would love to hear you describe the mind. Like, the mind is obviously like the most advanced instrument in nature. It's the most complex structure in the universe. What is your view? What's the Vedic worldview?
Of the mind.
The mind. Ooh.
I mean, in the Vedic worldview, the mind is primary. So what we think we become, right? And so we could say the mind is the instrumentality of consciousness. So it's what, consciousness is the stuff of life. Everything is conscious, right? In the Vedic worldview, we don't say there's such thing as unconscious, just subconscious, just something that we haven't yet been able to tap into. And, as we come into manifestation, as we enter these bodies, limitation is an inherent part. That's the reality. It's like a work of art. You can't paint with every color. You're going to end up with a canvas that looks like a piece of shit, quite literally. So it's like, in order for us to come into this world, limitation is inherent. And this is why there's the common thread is an underlying of unworthiness, because consciousness itself wants to be everything. Right? And so we're in this limited form wanting to experience everything, right? But the practice of meditation says embrace what we could kind of use as a synonym for limitation is uniqueness. Like embrace your unique expression. And so when we allow consciousness to flow through us in a way that is expressive of infinite capability and possibility, and we're embracing this particular expression of it, we're allowing consciousness to have the experience that it desires. That's what it wants. That's what we call the Leela, or the play of consciousness. It wants to experience itself as absolutely everything, from what we would perceive as wrong or bad, all the way to what we would perceive as the highest good. And so the mind is the instrumentality that allows consciousness to function and move around in the world and express itself in every possible way. It's so powerful. The mind is so powerful. And also its nature is to think.
Yes.
And so we want to honor that natural aspect of the mind and just be a little bit suspect. This is like my new favorite thing with the mind and how I'm working with my own mind. When the flavor of my thinking becomes limiting, when it feels negating, when it's like a yeah but or so what,
harsh and critical.
It's like just being a bit suspicious. Like what's happening there, hun? Should we have a chat? Like you okay? But that suspicion implies space.
Yes.
And
that degree of separation there.
Yeah, and that degree of separation requires awareness. And this is what the meditation practice propitiates. It's like, how can we cultivate a state of awareness that lets us view the mind in a way that's not completely absorbed?
Yeah.
Because so often, and so many of us, myself included, we're totally absorbed in the process of thinking. We're totally convinced by everything that comes through the mind. And this is where the function of the mind, which is to help us survive, right, and is looking to protect us, we can treat that with compassion and love when we have space. But when we're completely convinced and absorbed in that, the faculty of the mind can become subject to our conditioning. And our conditioning is just the state of this nervous system based on past experiences. And in the Vedic worldview, this life, but also other lives.
Yes.
And so it's like, if we're living from a place of conditioning and complete absorption, being completely convinced by everything the mind says, it can be a little problematic, especially when we have those moments of limitation, which are inherently a part of the human experience.
Yeah.
But being able to witness those, being able to create space around those, being able to love those with compassion and care. Like, I had this experience last night. I was cooking dinner. It had no hooks. It was just, my mind was just, what about this? What about this? You know,
Fresh.
negative, limiting, limiting. And I was like, interesting. Okay. And I was just, the word that always comes up is just like suspicious. I'm very suspicious about what's happening here. And it's almost, when you can create that space, it's kind of playful. It's kind of like almost laughable. But in the beginning, it's not funny.
No, it's not funny.
It's
at
very
all.
painful.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's more painful than others as well. This experience last night was very light and free, and I was in a really kind of spacious environment. And so in that way, it felt really sweet.
Yeah.
Like, oh, sweet mind.
Yeah.
Come back to the self.
Yeah.
Everything is fine. I love and care for you.
And you learn to collaborate rather than compete with your mind. You're not fighting your mind. Thoughts aren't evil. They're not trying to ruin or sabotage your life or your meditation practice.
This is probably the biggest takeaway that I've got from meditation in general. It's like, we don't have to be in any particular state to sit. We don't have to be in any particular mood. We don't have to have any particular thought pattern. You know, it's just be as you are, not as you'd like to be. You know, and a lot of us sit down with an expectation of what we'd like to be, and maybe meditation's going to deliver it to us. I was actually speaking to my student just before, and she was like, the revelation that she had was, I actually thought if I did these practices that I would be moving towards a place of greater joy and fulfillment and happiness. But what I'm coming to realize is all those things that I want come from a place of acceptance. Yeah. So actually, it's not that the limiting or negative experiences completely disappear, but my relationship to them shifts. And so they hang around for less time. It's kind of like process. And we have big processes as well, which feel maybe a little more tricky, but...
Of course, because the body feels safer, it's going to reveal the deeper stuff.
Oh, look at you. She knows.
I'm learning so fast. Well, where's one?
Yeah,
So if our fundamental nature is being, right? Same in you, same in me. How come it expresses differently? That fundamental innermost core aspect of self.
So we have, it depends what layer we're talking about, because we have so many layers, right? We call them koshas, and so we have what we could call in some frameworks the Anandamaya kosha, the layer of supreme inner contentedness. This is not different between me and you.
Yes.
This is the same. But as that, you know, that ananda, that supreme contentedness starts to move through the layers of this uniqueness or limitation like we were talking about before, it comes in contact with what we were calling samskaras, or you can call them vasanas. These are the impressions of this lifetime and past lifetimes that are actually bespoke opportunities for us to grow. They're unique for us, and they're kind of demanding that we evolve in certain ways. And, you know, within the Vedic worldview, we chose this. We chose this life, we chose these parents, and we chose these circumstances because we knew, you know, not on an intellectual level, but on a soul level, what would serve our evolution best. And so as that ananda, that consciousness, that bliss starts to express itself through this uniqueness, it actually wants to have particular experiences. And so often, you know, we spend our life moving away from those experiences that help us to grow, because what happens when we grow? We're stretched. Like if you just think about grabbing something and pulling it to help it to grow, it's like, well, it's pretty stretchy. And you can't just go like, boom.
All at once.
All at once.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, somewhat problematic with the culture that we're a part of, is that we want things right away. And so I jumped into meditation and applied the framework of the patriarchy and capitalism to meditation. How can I get it all now? I'll just do as many practices in the shortest amount of time. And this is what, it puts a lot of pressure, undue pressure and stress on the nervous system.
Bench pressing meditation.
No, yeah, you're just applying the doing to the being.
Yeah.
You know, and it's something that, spiritual striving is something that as you continue becomes unsustainable.
Yeah.
That's it. So it's actually inherently destructive. And so you realize as you continue to practice what no longer is possible because it falls away, or it starts to impact your life. Like, you know how a lot of meditation teachers will suggest, if you meditate too much, just look at your eyes open experience. What's happening?
Yeah.
Is your life falling apart? Are you able to fulfill your daily duties? Like, how is the meditation manifesting in your eyes open experience? Because this is telling you, right, if the meditation is being successful or not, right? You don't measure the success of a practice by what's happening in the practice. You measure by what's happening in your life.
Yes.
And so, you know, as the residue of stress release, you know, because that's what we're doing when we're meditating, we're releasing these limitations. If we come into the eyes open and we've been doing a little bit too much of that, it starts to be projected onto those who are around us. And I spent, you know, a lot of the beginning of my practice in like the fire of deep stress release and kind of just noting how that was impacting my environment and then adjusting, turning the heat up or down on my practice. And this is what you learn. This is how you become a teacher. You turn the heat up and then you notice, and you turn the heat down so that when a student comes to you, you can tell what they need.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love, you mentioned the destructive force. And, you know, they speak about meditation as a destruction operator. I'd love to hear you speak on it. By the way, I'm loving hearing you speak about everything. So good. And while you speak on it, could you explain in relation to it the laws of nature?
Of course.
Yes.
So, I mean, one of my teachers says, meditation is total annihilation of the constructs and ideas you have about your life and what should be happening in it. And so what are we destroying? This is really important. Like, if meditation is a practice of, let's call it dissolution, because it can be a bit sweeter. It doesn't have to be destruction. Dissolution is the process of willingly letting go of anything that's no longer serving us.
Amazing.
Sounds pretty simple, right?
Nice.
That's great. We love that. And so some things, it's just kind of like, I offer it to the lake like a little flower and there it goes down the stream. And then other things, it's kind of like, not that thing. Yeah. Or like, not that time. You know, not that time. Like, I will let go of it, but when I want to let go of it, you know? And so it's very interesting. But the practice of meditation is a catalyst for growth, because you start to put your hand up to be a vehicle for evolution and progressive change. That's what you're doing when you're meditating. And so you're kind of calling in, you're saying like, oh yeah, I'll do it. And nature, those laws of nature that you wanted me to talk to, you know, they come in many different forms, but they are awake, they are conscious. And so they perceive in the field, individuality that wants to help with the evolution of all things. Let's pour in what we could call Shakti, energy, consciousness, and allow this vehicle for progressive change to really help the collective. It's like nature responds and is aware. And so I think I actually talked about this the first time that you came to that class.
This is exactly what you spoke about.
We're talking about creation, maintenance, and destruction, and how a lot of us, as a result of trying to maintain for too long atrophy, the relevance of what we're holding on to subsides, and then what we invite in is the destruction operator. And don't get me wrong, maintenance is not the issue here, right? We need to nourish ourselves with things, like things that are relevant, things that hold importance, like rest and food and water, otherwise we will die. And so maintenance is important. It's just that we live in a society that fears change.
Loves the status quo.
Yeah, and like change represents the unknown. But the only thing that's guaranteed in life is change. That's literally it. Yeah. Right? In this manifest reality. Yeah. In this manifest reality, in this body, the only thing that's guaranteed is change. And so what tends to happen is we build these lives for ourselves on our terms, what we think is our terms anyway. And then we're like, okay, now stay the same.
Yeah.
I don't want you to change.
Yeah, done all this work
Yeah.
to make it like this.
And it's perfect.
Yeah.
And so this is where we get kind of hooked into the atrophying of relevance and the kind of falling away. And so what we want to be working towards is, maintaining what's nourishing, but then stepping into creation. How can we be creation-led, right? If things are always changing, how can I begin to perceive where things are going? And I can only perceive that in the present moment,
Yes.
not in the conditioned ideas of the future. And so, present moment awareness is the goal of practice. That is enlightenment. Be here now. That's it. It's very simple, right? But within that, there's so much richness and fullness and wholeness, and being able to perceive exactly what's happening in this environment around me. The future exists right here, right now in this moment. And so if I'm fully here, I can see where things are moving. And so I can engage in the present moment creatively. And that allows me to shift and change. And, this practice of meditation makes us masters of letting go.
Yes.
And so if I'm perceiving creatively what's needed, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to let go of that and I'm going to move on, right? Even if it seems from the outside in, oh my God, he spent so much time on that project, or he was moving in that direction for like 12 years. It's like, it doesn't matter. That's no longer relevant. I'm going to move in the other direction. And, that takes practice and time. And it's not that I'm detached. And in fact, it's actually, in being non-attached, I feel more. Because I'm fully here.
Yeah.
And then when something needs to be let go of, I have to grieve it straight away. I don't have a choice, actually. So it's being in the present moment and being non-attached, not detached, fully feeling, I can start to engage more creatively. And so, we're letting go, we're dissolving what's no longer needed, we're noticing what's nourishing us and being aware of anything that might atrophy and create a kind of maybe a slowing or a kind of stuckness or a blockage. And then where possible, I'm moving in the direction of creativity and engaging in the present moment creatively.
It's so good. I love the distinction between being detached and non-attached. Like many people think it involves not feeling. You're actually feeling the full spectrum.
But it's like, I love you, but I don't own you. If I own you, that's different to loving you, because that's got an agenda behind it. Does that make sense? So actually that cuts off the feeling.
Yes.
Whereas I love you and I know actually that we can't be together anymore.
Inclusiveness, not possessiveness.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like, I can love you for as long as it's relevant. And don't get me wrong, the pain of letting go of some of these things when you're like in deep relationship with them is a tragedy, right? And that's the beauty of life as well. Like I had this experience recently of processing something from my childhood, and it was like really soft. And like I was just kind of sitting and like tears were rolling down my face, and I was contacting a part of myself that didn't have a voice and that was afraid to be vulnerable, and I was crying, but it was so beautiful. And allowing the full spectrum of human emotions to be recognized as beautiful.
Yes.
Right? And knowing that they all have a place, like anger has a place, frustration has a place, it all has a place.
They're not inherently negative.
Exactly. It's just that, how can we engage with them in a way that's relevant? Anger is the catalyst. It's going to push us into action, and that's needed sometimes when there's, stuck, frustrated energy.
So much charge and energy behind anger to use it.
Yeah. Injustice, all that kind of stuff.
Love. So you spoke about enlightenment, and I think people associate this usually with like caves and monks, but in the modern world, which you did touch on in terms of be here now, like how do you, make that something that's actually achievable?
There's many different translations of enlightenment that I really like. I'll go with, there's a teacher known as Devi Ma, she's within the tantric tradition, and she says, enlightenment is when your mind no longer attacks you. Very simple.
I haven't heard that and I love it.
Right?
So
and then another definition that I really like is Johnny Pollard. He says, you are enlightened to the degree that you can allow someone else to be their most authentic self. So it's like you are enlightened to the degree that you're allowing everyone around you to feel natural and be natural. You know, enlightenment isn't this idea of a big inner experience, but rather an action-led dynamic that creates environments that are inviting and loving and supportive and that allow people to be as they are, not as you would like them to be. It's like releasing the agenda and just being present. I mean, it all comes back down to presence.
Yes.
It really does. And it's very simple. Like, there are, I don't know if we should go here, but in Vedic meditation, there are 7 states of consciousness.
I was going to ask.
And there are stages of enlightenment. Yeah. And we would say that Atma Vyapti and contacting the self is a stage of enlightenment. Realizing that what we are, who and what we are at our very essence. But it's not full enlightenment, because then there's other states. And from there, we'd move into being able to recognize that in others, and then perceiving everything, you know, as a direct experience of perception in all moments, pain or pleasure. This is here for, this has a function, and I can recognize it as love in the present moment, which, you know, if we think about really painful experiences in our life, in hindsight, it's easier to say that was love. But in the moment, so painful.
Almost impossible.
Yeah, almost impossible. And so we could say, you know, the definition of maybe a fuller state of enlightenment is to be able to perceive that in the present moment. It doesn't mean that we're not experiencing pain, but it's an understanding that beneath this pain is love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah, really beautiful.
So I would love to bring it back into like a practical sense of, you spoke to it at the beginning, when people think they're getting it all wrong, right? And so they think meditation, I want to touch on 2 things. Have an empty mind, be void of thought, right? I'd love to hear your opinion on emptiness. Like, is that just a myth? Do you feel like it's possible to have a thought-free state? And yeah, how you teach students to relate to thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. Emptiness and fullness is the same thing. So it's like, this idea of emptying the mind is not relevant when you're beginning to learn meditation, right? I know people that don't think, and that thinking is a kind of surprising delight and something that moves them into action. That is something that comes from decades and decades of practice.
Lifetimes and lifetimes.
Exactly, yeah. That's not my direct experience inside. And so having an idea of reaching towards that actually takes me away from the present experience, and it creates an expectation, a subtle expectation. And a lot of people, probably everyone I've ever taught, comes to meditation with a subtle expectation or flavor of, I should feel relaxed, my mind should be empty, and my experience should be gratifying. If I'm not having a gratifying experience, it's not working.
Yeah.
And so the way that I teach initially is, how can we learn to accept anything that happens in our meditation? And this kind of concept of being totally absorbed in the thought, this is something that's really helped me. In the meditation practice, let's just get really mechanical and pragmatic for a second.
Yeah.
We close our eyes, we move inwards. We adopt a technique, and that technique is an innocent orientation that we move in the direction of, right? We want to treat that like a friend at a party. We're not going to be like standing shoulder to shoulder, and every time they talk to someone else, it's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? It's like, you want to give them some space. Like, you'll be on the other side of the room, and then you notice, I'm talking to these other people, but my priority is to be with this friend. You'll slowly move in the direction of the friend. You won't start yelling at the other friends that you're with. Like, how dare you take me away from, like, it's just weird. It's not natural. Yeah. And so how can we relate and create dynamics for ourselves inside of meditation that are more natural? I've moved away from the practice. I was completely absorbed in the process of thinking, and now awareness has dawned. Once awareness dawns, I have a choice. Do I judge the experience that I was completely absorbed in, or do I innocently move back in the direction of the mantra?
Option B.
Yeah. That's very simple, and it's almost too simple. Again, it's too simple. But this idea of being choiceless in the process of thinking is something that really helps me personally. It's like, I'm completely absorbed in the thought or the experience, whatever it may be in meditation. So I'm choiceless until awareness dawns. And once awareness dawns, I simply move back to my practice, and that's it.
Yes.
That's it. In that way, we allow the intelligence of the mind body to play out whatever needs to play out. Who am I, from my limited condition, to tell the intelligence of this mind body what's right in the present moment?
Totally.
You know what? I'm not telling my heart to beat. I'm not controlling my digestion. Like, this body is intelligent. Nature is intelligent. Just look outside, you know. We don't have to sticky tape the leaves back on the trees when they're falling off. Like, this is wrong. Something's going wrong here. It's like, how can we really hone into the naturalness of the intelligence of our mind body and just let it play out. And this is something that we have to come into relationship with, because we're so disconnected from naturalness. As we come into relationship with the mind body, what we start to do is project the very manufactured artificial way that we live in our world into this, you know, organic biology, and we're like, it's messy. Yeah. It's not linear.
Hang on, you didn't get this right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The more I practice, the more I come into relationship with the messiness of sadhana, the messiness of life. And that messiness is also a playfulness, right? It's kind of like a cosmic joke. It's beauty.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want everything to be perfectly ordered.
Yeah.
Predictable. Boring.
Yeah.
Life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. Life is spontaneous. And within spontaneity is love. That's where love lives. It doesn't live in manufactured, controlled, artificial, linear progression. And so when we allow the ebbs and flows of our sadhana that may appear messy to manifest within the microcosm of our meditation, like, that is a microcosm of what's happening in our life. And this is why, you know thyself is so relevant in relationship, because it's micro, and then this is macro. And then community, macro, and then country, macro. You know, it grows. Universe.
Yeah.
You know, it's all present here. And so when you understand the self, you understand everything.
Yes.
And that's why the practice is so relevant and so powerful.
So someone listening is like, oh my God, this guy's incredible. I love this. I want this, right? So I'm going to meditate and I'm going to control this experience. So it's, you know, this, that, and I move in this direction. If I have a desire to experience this, how do I release or relinquish control and still trust that I'm going to arrive?
Your concept of evolution has nothing to do with the process of evolution. The answer is time. It's not an answer that people are going to love to hear. Time is going to, and this is how it's been for me, just slowly grind away the expectations of how I thought my practice would look and evolve. You know, I thought I was going to be moving in the direction of rainbows and lollipops and only fun times and really linear progression where I am now in control of what's happening in my practice, and I'm so happy about that. But actually it's like, relinquish control, embrace the messiness, open up to possibility, be spontaneous, let it unfold. And you get into these deeper layers like we've been talking about in this process, and time just grinds away any expectation, and it creates this like smooth, kind of like beautiful adaptability that allows us to release what was no longer serving, and then rather than focusing on that thing that we've had to let go of, immediately we turn into creativity. And so it's just like, you know, let go, and then once you let go, move forward. But if someone's coming to the practice like me with this really strong expectation or idea of where you're going to end up or how it's going to unfold, my invitation would be, get a teacher and do the practice. It's very simple, but be supported. I needed support. I'm the kind of person that went to every single group meditation. I required, communication with my teacher, and that's what I provide. And that's really crucial. in my personal journey, and so I provide that for my students as well.
I love that, because we are so forgetful, and so the reminders are everything.
They really are, and the inspiration to practice.
Yes.
You know, one of the biggest downloads that I'm having at the moment is that people just need to be inspired, because sitting alone in your house and closing your eyes without any idea of how it's impacting you, and also not being able to, sometimes it's easier for someone else to be like, oh yeah, that thing's happening because you're doing this thing. You know, or like the dynamics of our relating experience are just subtly changing. Can you see that?
Yeah, they're not calling you out, they're calling you forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.